Hey everyone, today we're out here doing a video on this Mosin M44, so we're continuing on with the old surplus rifle series. As you guys have seen before, I have a M9130, which is the full-size, kind of bigger brother of these. However, as the name would imply, in 1944, they started making these shortened versions. And, you know, if you know your World War II history, it's not really surprising why they were experiencing a lot more urban combat than the Russian military was really, I guess, used to with things like the Battle of Stalingrad. So they needed something a little bit shorter and a little bit handier for that kind of urban fighting. And, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, in retrospect, hindsight being 2020, you didn't really need that long of a barrel on a 9130 for the 7.62x5.4 cartridge to be effective. It's still going to be pretty effective out on one of these things. So normally I've done these videos by myself. However, I have my friend Christian here with me to help with his opinion on these, both with his just being able to run it as well as what your practical application is of these things in modern times. But we will discuss that later in the video.
Try to catch it with my pinky.
It's hard to do. If you guys are interested, I will be doing a direct comparison video between this and my M9130, just doing a little side-by-side comparison, talking about the features and just kind of some of the ballistic facts about the two of them, where I'll just be running the same ammo through the two rifles through a chronograph, just seeing what kind of sacrifice you're making with that shortened barrel. But anyway, with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and run down the features of this rifle, and then we'll keep chugging along with this video. So I'm going to just go ahead and start from the back here. Just like the 9130s, you have this metal butt plate, which, you know, it works. It holds the wood stock together, but it's definitely not comfortable. Is this thing uncomfortable to shoot? Not for me, but maybe for some people who are new to shooting, this is probably going to be a little stouter than you're going to want to start out with as a new shooter. But nonetheless, it's, you know, it's not terrible, and you can get a butt pad for these if you want. You have a little sling loop back here. This is just a era accurate sling. Did not come with a rifle, but I was able to pick one up and throw it on here. Moving up, I'm just going to cover the bolt here first. Bolt is pretty much identical to your standard 9130s if you guys are familiar with those. You got the straight knob here, and then when it is closed, the safety mechanism is pulling back on this knob and rotating it over. It is probably one of the least effective safeties that I've ever used on a rifle, but this one actually works better than the one on my 9130, which I will cover later. One of the interesting things between the two rifles too is this is a post-war, i.e. 1954, whereas my other one is a during war, I guess. So there's a lot of noticeable manufacturing differences, but you know, again, I'll cover that in the other video. So standard bolt, it works. It just like any Mosin Nagant, it's going to be a little sticky. There are ways of smoothing it out, but if you're willing to manhandle it around, it'll still work. But obviously, again, you can polish up some of the surfaces, and it'll work. You have an internal 5-round magazine, which is fed from stripper clips, and it's chambered in 7.62x5.4. And stripper clips, you can find them really easily, but finding good ones is really, really difficult. The ones that are super plentiful are garbage and really, really hard to use. If you've found them to work, then great, but I've had nothing but horror stories with them. If you want to get access to your magazine, there is a little notch down here where you can pull on the tabs, and then get access to maintenance your magazine or take it all apart and clean it out if you have to. Which you probably do want to clean these up if you're shooting old surplus ammo, because that ammo is corrosive, and that's obviously not a good thing if you want your rifle to live a happy and long life. Moving forward, you'll see one of the biggest differences between this and the 9130, other than the length obviously, is the much more realistic gradations of the rear sight here. I believe the rear sight on my 9130 goes out to like 2,200 meters, which I think is a little optimistic for an iron-sighted rifle with such a big front post and kind of rudimentary rear sight. This one goes out to 1,000 meters. So Still probably pushing it for iron sights, at least for me, but it's definitely within a lot more reasonable distances than the older models. Other than that, moving forward, with the exception of this bayonet lug, it just looks like a shortened M9130. You got both the bands back here, which have kind of slid around under shooting. You got another sling loop location up here. You got the cleaning rod underneath, which I'm always a big fan of. And then your regular hooded front sight, which is just a big fat post. It is driftable for windage up here, which I guess we can talk about accuracy a little bit later, but you may want to drift these. And then, as you'll see here, the very recognizable attached bayonet. So again, with the urban fighting, with only a 5-round magazine, it's probably pretty likely if you're in the heat of a battle inside, God forbid, a building, you're probably going to run out of 5 rounds pretty quick. So there is a likelihood that you're going to want to use a bayonet. Well, probably not want to use it, but you might have a need for a bayonet. So this actually rests around this front sight here and just springs into place. To take it off, you just pull this out and then fold it back. Now, moving on to accuracy a little bit, since we've talked about this bayonet. We both noticed that there is a very significant point of impact shift with the bayonet folded versus with the bayonet extended. Obviously, yeah, because of the fact that this actually wraps around the barrel, it's really messed with the harmonics and it's really putting pressure on that barrel. So what we did is just at 25 yards, we shot 5 rounds with the bayonet folded and 5 rounds with the bayonet extended. And let me go grab that paper and show you our results.
I don't like that.
You're thrilled?
Well, he and I had a conversation on the 4th of July. I gave him a shot of extremely expensive whiskey. I mean, if you think about it. Jesus.
Yeah, honestly, I think I usually have my thumb on the same side when I... So once again, 25 yards. My point of aim was right here. With the bayonet folded, my first 5 rounds were right here. So, given again my point of aim being dead center, it's 1, 2, 3, 4.5-ish inches to the left at 25 yards. So then we extended the bayonet, shot another 5-round group, which you see right here, and it's center, like about 1 inch left of my point of aim, but a good 3.5 inches different from with the bayonet folded at 25 yards, 3.5 inches. The way I found this out actually was when I was shooting this the first time after I got it. I had a piece of paper at 100 yards, and I shot with the bayonet folded because I didn't want to be that guy on the range who shoots with a bayonet attached to his gun. And I was off paper, and I thought that was really weird. And I remembered watching a video done by Mr. Guns and Gear about some of these rifles, and he had said that they zero them with the bayonet extended. And I thought, well, it can't make that much of a difference, so let me go ahead and try it. I'll be that guy. So I extended the bayonet, and lo and behold, I was now on paper at 100 yards. This was the first time I had actually quantified how much of a difference it makes, and man, again, 25 yards, 3.5 inches. So, hence why I brought up the driftable front sight. If you don't want to be that guy at the range who shoots with the bayonet extended, you're probably going to want to drift that front sight over so you can shoot accurately with the bayonet folded. So just something to keep in mind. And then as far as accuracy goes, again, I am terrible when it comes to shooting with iron sights, and we weren't exactly taking our time with these. We just wanted to get an idea of what our point of aim was, but you know, not super great results. We could probably do better if we had better ammo than the surplus ammo I've had forever, and we were actually taking our time. But minute a man accurate, definitely, which is what I can really expect from these old Russian rifles. Which, by the way, if I know my Russian markings, this is an Izhevsk stamp, which is the same as my M9130, which again will be a good side-by-side comparison when I compare the two rifles. Got the little triangle with the, you know, hey, I'm just saying.
I figured that was just an orientation mark, so you knew which way to point.
Point it that way.
Got some base to it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about these short barrel ones. I saw an article. It was like top 5 guns that you can shoot. And I thought, you must have never shot a 9130. That's the full size version of this, obviously.
I can't.
Are you stupid? So. Overall, a lot of my feelings towards this rifle are going to be mirrored in that M9130 video. So if you've seen that one, it's going to sound very similar. But in my opinion, these are not super practical in today's world. We've come a long way since 1944. I mean, in fact, only 3 years after this was introduced, we had the AK-47, and that, people are going to hate it when I say this, pretty much made obsolete just about everything else that the Russians were producing up to that point. Now, is this a very capable cartridge? Yes. There is nothing that lives in North America that this round will not take down. However, 5 rounds with a bolt-action rifle, in my opinion, in a rifleman context, just is not as good as a 30-round magazine with an intermediate cartridge. Now you could say, well, an AK-47 7.62x39 is really only good out to 300 yards. Sure, let's assume that's the case. This will be effective much further. However, with the sighting system included with these, I would be impressed if you're any more effective past 300 yards with this than you would be with an AK-47. That's just my take on it. To me, something that's very important is continuity of fire and gaining fire superiority quickly. And unless you have an immense number of people armed with these, as the Russians did during World War II, it's going to be really hard to gain fire superiority in a modern day setting with one of these, when in North America everyone else is going to be armed with AR-15s or other intermediate cartridged rifles out there. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree wholeheartedly with all of that. I mean, it is a big bullet. It does go, it does have a lot of range to it, but not out of this platform. I mean, you can't really hit anything accurately in 25 yards with the bayonet thing that's folded down. 300 yards, you're going to have to, aim into Boise to hit Michigan. Mm-hmm. So it's not exactly practical as a weapon of war. And if you think about, Russian casualty numbers during this particular time period where this was used, they died a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they had a lot of rifles in there, but they died a lot.
It's true.
So once you introduce a semi-automatic weapon into the theater of war, anything bolt action for direct engagement is going to become obsolete. So it's not unfair to say. I mean, look at the difference between what the Germans were able to accomplish with their bolt action rifles, and the Sturmgewehr 44 came out, and then all the rest of their fully automatic things came out. It's just an obsolete gun. It's fun to shoot. Mm-hmm. It hurts. The bolt is stiff and really hard to manipulate. Yeah. I got a boo-boo on my thumb from it. I keep trying to grab it with my pinky, but I can't seem to get that purchase with the pinky, so I got to really choke up on the whole hand. But all in all, I don't know what would make it better than it is. Meaning, what would make it more accurate? What would clean up some of the issues? You could polish these pieces. You could do some stuff with the barrel, take the bayonet off entirely, and then re-zero to the point of aim, point of impact for that. Great. But you still got a 5-round bolt-action rifle.
Yeah. With ammo that, unless you've stockpiled it, you're not really going to find plentiful.
You're not going to find it at Walmart, And as you said, there's nothing up in North America, at least where we're at, that this won't take down. So if you wanted it for a sporting rifle or, just a good hunting rifle that you don't have to worry too awful much about, sure, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But again, polish stuff, get the bayonet off of there, re-zero it out, and then you've got something that's going to be at least partially accurate.
Yeah. And I don't want to make it sound like I don't like this rifle. This is something that is probably never going to leave my collection. I like the looks of these rifles. I like the history behind them. It drives me crazy when I see people on forums or wherever else trying to argue that these are still a viable option in a SHTF scenario or grid down scenario or something like that. Is it better than no rifle? Yes, absolutely. But there are better options out there. And if you did want to go with a bolt action rifle, there are better bolt action rifles, world surplus rifles that are better. In fact, I would probably take one of those Lee Enfield rifles over one of these any day. It's a much smoother, faster bolt, and you have a 10 round external or 10 round magazine, which if you really had to, you could get replacement magazines and change out the magazines for. And for me, it was more accurate than this thing is. But again, I just wanted to put into context our thoughts as far as application. It's fun to shoot. It shoots a big fireball because of the shorter barrel. It's a great gun if you wanted to, for whatever reason, bury a gun somewhere. It's going to be pretty easy to bury one of these somewhere because it's a lot shorter than the 9130. But as far as a actual quote-unquote war-fighting rifle, we've come a long way, and there's a reason that Russia's not arming their frontline troops with these anymore, or really any first or second world country for that matter. I'm sure these are still in the battlefield somewhere in Syria or Afghanistan, but it's probably not the person's first choice.
But you are shooting a piece of history.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, and
absolutely.
there's merit to that.
Right.
It does have a long and distinguished history in the military, and it's, Mosin Nagant is a household name in rifles. Everybody knows, if you say Mosin Nagant, everybody knows what that is. It's not like you're saying, Jimenez 380, and nobody gives a rat's ass.
Or they shouldn't.
Exactly. So, I mean, it is, I like it. I mean, I like the look of it too. Everything that you said, it's a nice rifle to have because of the nostalgia, because of the history of it. But it is fun to shoot, but, as a weapon of war, even urban warfare, no.
Yeah. If I had to get a gun to defend myself and my family, this is going to be far from my first choice. Now, I know these were really, really popular. Like when I first became of age to purchase rifles, these were tremendously popular because they were really, really cheap. Now, even 9130, I was at Cabela's the other day and they overpriced everything, but they were selling regular 9130s, nothing special about them, for $300.
Geek.
M44s, you're looking to spend at least 50% more than that, typically.
You get less gun.
You get a shorter gun, but since there are fewer of them, supply and demand, whatever. And here's the weird thing, and I'll probably talk about this more in the comparison video. It's the same weight as a 9130, mostly because of this bayonet here. So I like the shorter length of it personally. If I did have to have this rifle to protect myself, I'd rather have the shorter length because I don't have to compensate for other things. But it's going to be harder to find and more expensive when you do find them.
It's inappropriate.
I know, it's terrible.
Completely
I'm an awful
inappropriate.
person. So again, I know I probably came off a little harsh with my criticisms. I can't talk. I know I probably came off harsh with my criticisms of this rifle, but again, I just want to make sure everyone understands where I'm coming from and understands that while this was cutting edge technology in 1944, actually not really, because M1 Garand was already out and that put this thing to shame, but we've come a long way and there are better options out there for a go-to defense rifle. But again, I think that horse has been beaten into a pulp at this point.
Yeah, but if somebody's on your front lawn trying to steal your Gran Torino, and you feel like you need to chase them off, this would do it.
It would. I don't think that's what he used.
No, you used the M1 Garand.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I'm just
But yeah, no, sure. And
quickly becoming a grumpy old man myself. I can
Yes.
see myself standing on my front lawn yelling at kids for playing hacky sack in my driveway.
well, and I should also point out, if you were to want to use these for home defense, which I would not recommend it, this round is going to go through your house, your neighbor's house, and probably
neighbor's
every
dog.
house next
Yeah.
door. So just something to keep in mind. Any other thoughts you have on this rifle?
No.
I mean, again, back in the early 2000s, even the mid 2000s, these were super cheap. You could buy a can of ammo for like a ham sandwich price, essentially. So back then, it was a perfectly viable option for someone who just wanted a cheap shooter. Unfortunately, that's just not the case anymore. Finding that ammo is really hard, and when you do, it's definitely not as cheap as it used to be. These rifles are not as cheap as they used to be. So I think if you want something just as a shooter, there are probably better options now. But as a collector, absolutely, you're going to have a great time with these. It's a fun gun to shoot. Like I said, I'm probably not going to ever get rid of it. It goes really well next to my 9130. It's just, you know, like you said, shooting a piece of history.
Right. I mean,
So-
if you could ignore the collusion and all that kind of stuff. Russian-made weapons, they do have a lot of history to them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that went on during the time period where these things were used. You know,
Right.
the siege of Stalingrad and all those kinds of stuff where they
Oh, yeah.
used the other one you have, and there's something to it if you're into that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and even though, like I said, obviously the AK-47 being introduced to the Russian military in 1947, these things were still used by the Russian military and their subsidiaries, let's say, for decades
Good
after
word.
that. So,
word, subsidiary.
yeah, well, you know, try to find a politically,
Constituency.
yeah. So again, these were used decades after the introduction of things like the AK-47. So again, they had their time, they had their place, but I think we've progressed, and there's just better options now.
You know, people say that about the 1911 too.
People do say that about the 1911. I'm pretty sure I'm one of those people that says that about the 1911.
I understand
But
this.
that is a topic for another video, because I know just me hinting at that is going to contribute to way more.
Which, as
hateful
we know,
comments.
got its patent in 1911, which was a significant amount of time before this thing.
I believe it actually was in 1910.
I don't
and it
care.
Didn't get introduced
I
to
don't
the
care.
military
I don't
service
care
in
what you say.
1911. Anyway,
Was it that? No, I think you're right. It did come. The patent did go on 1910.
whatever. Anyway, so again, if you want to see the comparison video between this and the 9130, definitely subscribe to my channel and see how that goes. And again, even with my harsh words, I'm still a big fan of the 9130 style rifle. I definitely want to pick up one of those Finnish versions as well as some of the other versions that are out there, just because, you know, I like them. It's hard to not like them. It's just you know, I have my other go-to rifles nowadays. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and throw those in the comment section down below. Try to get back to you as quick as I can. I am now uploading to full 30, so if you feel so inclined, definitely go over there and subscribe to my channel. If you don't watch videos over there, I get it. It's not very easy to do. However, given how YouTube is taking down and striking gun channels here, it's pretty likely that I'm living on borrowed time as it is. So if something does happen to my channel, at least you'll be able to follow what's going on over there. Again, if you feel so inclined, I do have a Patreon page, and go ahead and check that out. I post all my content there early, as well as doing some exclusive content over there as well. So check that out if you feel interested. But anyway, with all that said, any last words?
Should take a power sander to this stock.
Yeah, the stock could definitely use some refinishing, but I also kind of like its rugged look, I guess, for lack of a better word. It doesn't have any like the graffiti or anything, but
Just kind of watches.
yeah, I could try to brush up on my Russian and try to pretend I was,
You totally could do that.
yeah. Except it would not look right. Anyone who has an appraisal eye would know that came way after the fact. Anyway, so with all that said, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching. It was 3.5 inches at 25 yards.